Alright everyone, a powerful storm system is setting its sights on the United States over the next few days, and it's going to stir up some trouble, including the return of severe weather. We're talking damaging winds, large hail, and a serious threat of tornadoes. On top of that, a major flooding risk could develop this week across parts of the central and southern plains. And to top it all off, the end of this month is looking pretty wild, as we could see some seriously cold air move in, bringing some snowfall with it. So, in today's forecast, we are going to break down everything you need to know about the weather impacting the United States over the next 7 days. We'll start with what's happening across the country today, where we currently have a big storm system over the Northeast. This system already brought a blanket of snow to upstate New York and northern New England over the last 24 hours. We even saw some snow flurries pop up as far south as Philadelphia last night. Now, this storm is ushering in a blast of cold air that's going to chill the Northeast for the next 24 hours. So you'll definitely want to have those winter jackets handy. Temperatures are forecast to plummet by as much as 20 degrees below average for the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, let's shift our focus west, where along the West Coast and in the Rockies, we have a smaller storm system currently spinning over the Four Corners states. This one could actually spark some isolated storm activity and maybe even some severe weather tonight into tomorrow. It's mainly going to be targeting folks across the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. I'm also seeing at least a very low-end conditional tornado threat for tomorrow over in southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and Kentucky. We'll dive deeper into that in just a moment. But another thing this storm system might bring is a little bit of snowfall to parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. We'll get to that as well in just a bit. Then, looking back at the West Coast, a lot of moisture is continuing to bring rainfall, but the real headline this week will be a storm system brewing in the Pacific over the next few days. And that is the one that's going to bring the risk of more significant and possibly more organized severe weather. And on top of that, it carries a risk of flooding. Now, over the next few days, we are going to see multiple large storm systems affecting the United States. So, let's take a look at the mid-level flow on our jet stream. This is what really controls the weather patterns happening across the United States. Right now, we have a very strong jet stream over the Northeast, which is pulling very cold air down from Canada. Meanwhile, we have a very weak low-pressure system that is currently moving over the Rocky Mountains. What this is going to do heading into Tuesday is create the potential for some strong to maybe isolated severe storms late tonight in parts of Missouri, Kansas, and Illinois. But tomorrow, we might see a more organized risk of severe weather near a warm frontal boundary. And when that sort of setup happens, we can sometimes get elevated wind shear. When that occurs, organized severe weather can follow. So for Tuesday afternoon and evening, I'd keep a close eye on southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and western Kentucky for an isolated and very conditional risk of severe weather. Then, looking back at the West Coast, a lot of moisture is continuing to bring rainfall, but the real headline this week will be a storm system brewing in the Pacific over the next few days. And that is the one that's going to bring the risk of more significant and possibly more organized severe weather. And on top of that, it carries a risk of flooding. Now, over the next few days, we are going to see multiple large storm systems affecting the United States. So, let's take a look at the mid-level flow on our jet stream. That basically means you get colder air up high and warmer air near the surface. That's not going to be as much of a factor with this upcoming storm system, which means our risk of a widespread severe weather outbreak is much less likely, and that is very good news. However, this could still produce a threat of severe weather on Wednesday and Thursday, and maybe even into early Friday. The main action, though, looks to be in the southern plains on Thursday, with damaging winds, some hail, and perhaps a couple of tornadoes being a possibility. I think Wednesday night and Thursday will be the key timeframes to watch. Then on Friday, the storm system will weaken a bit as it moves across Missouri. We might see some isolated severe weather continue into the mid-Mississippi Valley on Friday, as record-breaking high temperatures will also be tagging along with this system. And then by Saturday into Sunday, it gets absorbed by our polar jet stream. And then, as we head into the weekend and early next week, we could see yet another big storm track right across the desert Southwest, potentially bringing more severe weather and maybe even a little bit of snow to some areas. Then, by the very end of November, it looks like things are going to get very crazy very quickly. We could see a huge dip in our polar jet stream right around Thanksgiving or just after, which means we could have some very cold polar air coming straight down from Canada. Now, let's put all this into simpler terms with our future radar. Here's what it looks like for tonight. A weak storm system will track across the northern and central plains, bringing some strong storms. These will be mostly elevated, meaning they're not rooted at the surface. So, small hail and maybe an isolated quarter-sized hailstone or two will be possible this evening and into the overnight hours across Missouri and Illinois. By tomorrow morning, the northern side of that low-pressure system will bring some very light snowfall to southern Minnesota and central southern Wisconsin. I don't expect much more than maybe 2 inches of snow for most of those areas. Then, on Tuesday afternoon, we'll have to keep an eye out for that potential for isolated severe weather during the afternoon near the warm front in southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and western Kentucky. By the time we get to Wednesday, that storm system will weaken as it approaches the east coast. And then, a new storm system will be making its way across the desert southwest. On Wednesday, I would anticipate at least a few severe storms being in play across Texas and Oklahoma. Damaging winds, a little bit of hail, and maybe an isolated tornado will be a possibility on Wednesday. Thursday still appears to be the main day for severe weather risk. It's looking pretty messy right now, so I'm not fully convinced this will be some kind of major outbreak. However, I do think there will be at least a scattered threat of damaging winds, perhaps some hail up to the size of golf balls, and maybe a couple of tornadoes. These could pop up really anywhere in Oklahoma or Texas with a very strong southwestern wind shear in place that's going to help ramp things up. Then, as we go into late Thursday night and early Friday, this storm system will continue moving across the Ozarks and eventually toward the mid-Mississippi Valley. And on Friday evening, we'll be watching that system as it makes its way across the Ohio Valley and the Dixie Alley. There's perhaps a low-end threat of severe weather for the mid-Mississippi Valley and parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. So, it's something to watch for on Friday, but anything that does happen should remain isolated. Then, by the weekend, we'll be watching for another storm system across the desert southwest yet again. That could bring more storm activity to Oklahoma, Texas, and even the lower Mississippi Valley as we go into late Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. However, that is still well over 7 days from now. So, we don't know exactly what's going to happen there, but it does look like the weather will stay active across the Gulf Coast region, and by the very end of November, things could get pretty wild. Again, I'm not certain we're going to see a winter storm quite like this, but I do think Arctic air is definitely on the table for much of the country. Now, one of the things I've been hinting at in this forecast is the potential for severe weather tomorrow in the Ohio Valley. The Storm Prediction Center currently has no risk of severe weather outlined for either tomorrow or Wednesday at the time I'm recording this. But I do think there's a potential here for an isolated, discrete supercell or two to develop just after about 4 or 5 o'clock. It's all going to depend on how fast the morning clouds and rain clear out. But if they clear out quickly enough, we could get a couple of storms to fire up near a warm frontal boundary during the afternoon hours. And if that were to happen, we could see a storm or two produce the threat of large hail and even some damaging winds. I wouldn't even rule out a tornado threat in this area because there will be plenty of wind shear in a very small corridor back over in southern Illinois and southwestern Indiana. It's a pretty short window, though. I'm thinking somewhere around 3 to 7 o'clock is really going to be the window of opportunity for a potential severe weather risk. So definitely something to keep a close eye on. Now, I'm not saying this is a 100% guarantee, but I'd put it at about a 40% chance that we see these storms really ignite, and if they do, things could get intense. The other huge story we're tracking is the temperature roller coaster. You'll have to be a bit patient for the big drop, though, because over the next week, we're forecasting above average warmth for almost the entire country. In fact, record-breaking high temperatures are on the table for the southern plains and the southeast on Wednesday and Thursday. That warmth will stick around through the weekend and into early next week, right up until we see that polar air start to dive down from Canada, which looks likely right around Thanksgiving. The million-dollar question is when it will arrive. It could show up a day or two before the holiday. Or it could hit a day after Thanksgiving. That timing makes a world of difference for your holiday plans. We could either be talking about record-breaking heat like the GFS model shows for the East Coast, or we could be talking about a deep freeze with well below average temperatures that could even set some record lows. So, while it's a bit of a nail-biter, it looks like we're in for at least 1, if not 2 Arctic blasts during the last part of November and into early December. So you better start getting ready for winter, because we are definitely going to get a taste of it during the first couple of weeks of December. But back to this week's storm, it isn't just bringing a severe weather threat, we're also facing a risk of flooding as we head into the middle and end of this week. It's not looking like a massive flood event right now, but I do believe some isolated locations on Wednesday and Thursday could get soaked with as much as 4 to 8 inches of rainfall. I'm thinking the highest totals will probably hit somewhere in southern Oklahoma or far northern North Texas. For everyone else, we're looking at a widespread 1 to 3 inches of rain across the Central Plains, stretching into the Mississippi Valley and even the Ohio Valley, including Kentucky and Tennessee. So get ready for a soggy few days. For some of you, this will be a much-needed drink for the ground, but for others, I know you've seen enough rain, especially after how wet it's been over the last several months. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. I'll most likely have another video for you tomorrow if there are any big updates on this storm system. I'm even thinking there's a solid chance of a live stream either tomorrow or Thursday, so make sure you're subscribed and have clicked that bell icon to get notified with the latest updates.